Can horror books be cozy? I guess let's find out. Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jesse, and in today's reading vlog, I'm going to be reading 3 books that have been described as cozy horror books. I just get a little bit confused when I hear cozy be paired with horror, because when I think horror, I think thrills, I think screams, I think horrific, terrifying things. I just have a hard time pairing all of those things with cozy in my mind. Like, the two just don't fit together. The two cannot hold hands. I'm going into this with a bit of a pessimistic attitude, to be honest. It's one of those situations where I will believe it when I see it. I want to Google cozy horror just to get an idea as to what I'm getting myself into. What is cozy horror? Okay, this reads, cozy horror is a subgenre of horror fiction that combines elements of traditional horror with more traditional cozy genres such as mystery or suspense. Okay, I can kind of see that, to be honest. Cozy horror stories typically feature a small town setting. I love a small town setting. A cast of relatable characters. Love relatable characters. And a mystery that characters must solve. Love a mystery. Sign me up, I guess. I am, in fact, signing myself up by doing this video, so it works out. My interest is being pulled in. I've been lassoed, and the lassoer is tug-a-lugging me closer to being optimistic about this genre. The first book that I picked out for this video is The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands. I heard Monica from She Might Be Monica talk about this book. In her TikTok, she literally opens it being like, is cozy horror a thing? Because if cozy horror is a thing, that's what this book fits under. This book is listed on Goodreads as historical fantasy, but after reading the description, I can definitely see how it might fit in the horror lane. In this story, there once was a train that traveled through the wastelands, and tickets were so hard to get, like they would fill up instantly almost, because people wanted to go through the wastelands in order to see the wastelands creatures. These creatures that are terrifying, jaw-dropping, will give you instant nightmares, but at some point something horribly wrong went down, and everybody who was on the train when this event occurred don't remember anything that happened. The train took its last and final journey, and nobody knows what happened. The train is now being rebooted, and we follow several passengers who are eager to make their way through the wastelands. I had picked this book up several times at Barnes & Noble because it's just such a beautiful book in general. There's some beautiful maps in the beginning, and my interest was definitely piqued by it, so I'm excited to have a video concept where I can read this book and see how I feel about it. I'm also very happy that my library had a copy, so shout out to the library. You're the best. My favorite thing ever. I will keep you guys updated as I read. Without further ado, let's get to reading. Reading update time. I have made it to page 131 in the book, chapter 4 of part 3. I guess I was a little bit wrong about what this book was about. I thought that this book was about these people like eagerly wanting to go to the wastelands, but it's more so about a train that has to travel through the wastelands. Well, it doesn't have to. There are other ways to travel to these specific locations, but anyways, the train runs from China to Russia, from Beijing to Moscow, and in between those two places is the wastelands. And so this train has been built that is able to withstand the wastelands, and it's basically the fastest way that you can get back and forth between those two places, so that's why people sort of tend to take this route. I definitely can see both sides of what Monica was saying in calling this a cozy horror book. I feel like the atmosphere itself is rather cozy. We really haven't delved too deep into like the creepy eeriness of the wastelands. There's been obviously lots of discussions happened about it, but we've mostly just been kind of exploring the train and the different passengers, and I feel like the atmosphere itself definitely lends itself to the kind of cozy vibes. All this to say though, I'm not even sure that we've really gotten to like the good parts of the book yet. Like, I feel like I ordered a donut with jelly filling on the inside, and the donut came and there was no jelly filling on the inside. I'm feeling a little bit disappointed. I feel like this book has mostly been built up of just like learning about the different passengers and seeing their interactions and conversations, which has not been like the worst. And I do like the fact that we have like lots of different passengers, lots of different backgrounds and different reasons as to why they're even on the train. I think that that is bringing and offering up a lot of variety, which is really nice in a book. Obviously, like, it keeps things exciting and interesting, and there is a thread of mystery being sewn through the book, and that to me is honestly what's keeping me in this book. Otherwise, I feel like I would DNF this book just because so far not a lot has happened. It's very slow paced, and I feel like the characters, while they are offering a lot of variety, I don't feel like I am getting to know the depths of them that well. Like, it feels very surface level. I just don't have anything that's tying me to this book yet. I'm just not feeling invested quite quite yet. The writing is nice, the atmosphere is executed really well, but I fear this book is going to fall into the concept sounded more interesting than the actual execution of the story category. And the thing is, I have all these critiques, but I feel like this book could work for a lot of people. I'm just being picky McPickerson over here, and I think that my expectations were just like a little bit higher because the concept itself just sounded so interesting to me. But I guess we really haven't gotten to like the meat of the story yet, so my opinion could completely flip in the second half. I've been known to do that. I've been known to like not really enjoy or vibe with the first chunk of the book, and then after I've read the second part of the book, I come back around and I'm like, y'all, this was a banger. So we'll see. We'll see if my opinion changes at all with the second half of this book. I'm getting ready to go to the gym and get some laps in. And then this evening, I'm really excited because my Japanese stroll garden in town has a fall festival. They've done it for like years, probably like 10, 15 years, and I've never been able to make it out to one, and I'm so excited to finally be able to get the chance to go this evening. The only reason that I haven't gone in the past is because I always forget that it's even happening. Like, I just always forget the date. I don't mark it in my calendar, but this time I joined the Facebook page for it, so I'm ready, I'm prepared, I'm super excited, and I have no idea what to even expect. I love a fall festival moment, so I'm looking forward to whatever tonight brings. Reading update time, I finished The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands. Now here's the deal. I feel like I achieved what I set out to do when reading this book, and that was to kind of like understand cozy horror, what that means exactly. And this book definitely delivered for the most part on that vibe. It's a slower moving story. The train atmosphere definitely lends to like that warm, cozy vibe. And the bits that we hear about the Badlands, even though I wanted more, definitely delivers on the creepy front. But overall, I feel like this book just like was not for me, and I could kind of pick up on that fact pretty early on. I was like, I don't really feel like this book is going to be something that I will enjoy. I thought that maybe something in the second half would really grab me, but unfortunately nothing really grabbed me. I just felt bored overall reading this book, which is never something that you want to feel when you're reading a book. Like, you never want to feel bored. Like, that is probably the worst criticism any book can receive, is that somebody was bored while reading it. But like, that's where I landed with this book. I just feel like for the most part of this book, like, it takes a while for anything to happen. For the most part, it feels like nothing is really happening. Obviously there are things that are happening, but the things that are happening are not interesting enough to grab me in particular. I'm not going to speak for other people, because there might be a lot of people that enjoy this book. I feel like a lot of people actually would enjoy this book. I feel like I might be in the unpopular opinion when it comes to this book. I'm honestly sad that it didn't work for me either, because again, the concept sounds amazing, but I think that that's my other issue with the book, is that it doesn't really deliver on the concept. The concept itself sounded more interesting than the actual execution of it, and I think that that comes in part in the Badlands not really being explored enough. That could have been shaped out so much more and brought in such an interesting layer to the story, but it just does not do that. It doesn't do that, and it made me so sad. I felt like that was going to like really be the thing that kind of tied me to this book, but no. The string that it was trying to wrap around me to get entangled with this book got cut loose and just fell completely off, and I found myself leaving this book just feeling It just didn't hit the mark for me. It did not reach the landing, and I'm leaving it, giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, I'm really sad about it. But again, I feel like I'm leaving this book having a better understanding for what cozy horror looks like, and I am excited to read more books that fall under that umbrella. I went to the fall festival last night at my local Japanese stroll garden, and it was so delightful. I will say though, there was like way too many people. I just don't do that well with crowds these days. Like, there was once upon a time when it was fine. I didn't mind other people, but these days I'm like, anxiety. A person anxious, another person, anxious, another person. Ha! That's how I feel, basically. So anyway, I feel like I'm painting it as a bad experience because of my anxiety, but I had a really good time. There was some really interesting performances, and I had probably the best fried rice of my life at this festival. It was from a specific food truck, and I'm gonna try to track down that food truck again at some point and get it again because it was so good. I was just not expecting it to be as good as it was. I've been like having dreams about it, low key. Anyway, my mouth is literally watering talking about it, like the saliva is salivaing in my mouth. You know what, let's talk about the next book, okay? Alright, it has been a second since I have updated this vlog. I'm working on quite a few videos right now for the month of October. I'm filming this currently in September. I just want to put out a lot of like fun, spooky content, so I'm kind of balancing a lot of vlogs at the moment, but I'm back to working on this one. I'm back to reading another cozy horror book, which I think I've already like figured out what I set out to do within this video, and that is to figure out what cozy horror is, because I feel like I learned quite a bit in reading that first book, but I definitely want to read a couple more, so we're gonna keep going with this vlog. We're not just gonna end it there. The next book is another booktuber cozy horror recommendation. This one comes from Gabby Reads. The book in question is Someone You Can Build a Nest In. I picked this up from my library the other day, and Gabby Reads posted about this on her Instagram and said that it was like a cozy horror fantasy. That's how she described it. So I'm gonna take her word for it and figure out what makes this cozy, what makes it horror, and I guess what makes it fantasy too. Got a three-way combo situation going on here. We follow a character named Shusheshin. I believe that's how you pronounce it. This is how you spell it. So that's how my brain is saying it. Shusheshin. I could be incorrect though, but Shusheshin is a shapeshifter. She once lived peacefully as this amorphous lump in a swamp, but then these monster hunters came through and disrupted her peace, so she has now taken on the form of a human by reconstructing herself. She ends up having an incident that causes her to fall sick, and this human that assists her throughout the sickness and makes sure that she gets back on her feet and is feeling better, Shusheshin ends up falling in love with this human. The human in question reveals the fact that they have been trying to hunt down this shape-shifting monster. Wonder who that could be? But also poor Shusheshin. She was just about to reveal her feelings, and she just got like the ultimate friend zoned? Would that be called friend zoned? Monster hunter zoned? Is that what it would be called? I'm very intrigued to see what this book has to offer. I feel like it could be pretty wacky, and I love wacky. Without further ado, let's get to reading. Reading update time. I have made decent progress in Someone You Can Build a Nest In. I am on chapter 31, what page is this? Page 189. Killing it, slaying it, doing all the things. This is so interesting because it definitely has horror elements, but I would say that it's also like leaning on the romantasy side of things, which I was not expecting. I did know going in that there was going to be a romance, like I was expecting that aspect of it, but I wasn't expecting it to kind of like take over the story, but it has been a big chunk of the book. A lot of this book is the monster falling in love with the monster hunter and vice versa, and we see the inner monologue and the inner thoughts of the monster as this process is going down. I will say that the romance itself is one of my critiques of this book. I wouldn't say that it's like super off-putting, but I just feel like I don't really understand the connection. Like it feels very surface level, and I just need to know more. I need to see why exactly they're falling in love. I mean, there's definitely aspects that are shown as to why the monster is falling in love, but it just doesn't seem like enough. But maybe it's because they're a monster and it's an unfamiliar feeling. There's quite a bit of gruesome, gross bits in the first little chunk of the book, specifically in the introduction. When I first read like the first chunk of the first chapter, I had to reread it to make sure that I was reading correctly what was happening. Essentially, Shusheshin and her siblings at the beginning are feeding on their father, like feeding on his body parts. It had me stopping, dropping, and rereading just to verify the fact that that's what was happening. But it was in fact happening. And then Shusheshin's siblings become even hungrier and start attempting to feed on her, and she has to like fend for herself. So there's quite a bit of sick happenings sprinkled throughout the book, that's for sure. In terms of coziness, I feel like I am coming to an understanding of what cozy horror is by this book and the last book that I read, and it's mostly in the atmosphere, I would say. Like atmospherically, this book is so cozy, and like I love the cozy vibes that it's bringing to the table. I will say that the story itself is also just like rather slow moving, and I think that that kind of lends itself to this sort of coziness as well. Sort of a story that is going at its own pace, not trying to rush through things, and just being kind of like subtle in progression. But at the same time, I feel like there are a lot of high stakes brought in, and that sort of brings in a disruptiveness to the coziness. I am having a lot of fun with this one. Honestly, I feel like the first 100 pages had a lot of like silly, goofy moments that I was not expecting at all. I sort of was expecting this book to maintain a serious tone, but it's been pretty like lighthearted for the most part. Obviously there is some like serious things happening, but for the most part it's had some like fun, lighthearted vibes, and I'm here for it. I've decided in September, I'm currently filming this in September, you're seeing it in October, but I've decided that we're gonna be doing Friday night fright nights, where I go get myself some food and then come back and do a double feature horror movie night. So tonight I'm watching 2 horror movies. Don't know exactly what I'm watching yet, but I will update you guys once I've watched them and share my thoughts on said movies. I think there's just like a lot of horror movies that I haven't watched yet that I want to get caught up on, because for the longest time I didn't realize that I loved horror, but here I am proclaiming my love for horror. I mean, I should have known. I've been playing a horror game for literally like the past 5 years, so I'm not sure why that didn't dawn on me that like maybe I would be interested in horror things, but like I think I'm interested in horror things. So that's the plan tonight. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go get myself some fried rice, so I'm super excited about it. Let's go. This might end up being a really distracting angle because you can literally just like see me in the mirror. See the back of my head. How's the back of my head looking? It looks okay. Anyway, reading update time. I finished reading Someone You Can Build a Nest In, and I ended up really enjoying this. I thought it was a really charming and oddly heartwarming book. I was not expecting that at all from a horror book, but it definitely had like a charming and heartwarming feeling to it. I definitely have my critiques. It's not a perfect read for sure, but we'll get around to that. It has a nice balance of cozy lightness and horror, and then it brings in a bit of romantasy. Like I feel like romantasy is honestly what I would categorize this book as, I'm pretty sure. It's definitely heavily focused on the romance. We see the horror elements come into play pretty early on. I would say that this book would be categorized as like body horror. There's a lot of body horror woven throughout this book. Sheshishin's character pretty much brings in the horrors, the frights. I mean, her entire thing is the fact that like she eats people, she feeds on people. If you want a clear example as to how she brings in the horrors, that's how she brings in the horrors. There's also a bit of a tense feeling throughout this book because there are monster hunters in this world. Obviously, we are following a monster who has disguised herself as a human, and she has to maintain that humanness, and it's a bit of a challenge for her, which was honestly one of my favorite aspects of this book, which is being in her head and seeing her try to maintain her humanness and try to humanize herself, because she found it really difficult. And honestly, there are times when she's like, being a human is ridiculous. Like, humans are so stupid. And she's having this like inner battle throughout the book of her monster side and her trying to put on this front of a human, and I loved that so much. She's doing what she can to protect herself, to keep this front up. There are definitely some thrilling twists and moments that helped keep this book engaging, which I felt like I really needed. I really needed those twists to come into play, because had those twists not been there, I don't think I would have been as invested, which let's just go ahead and move on over into talking about my critiques, because one of my critiques is the fact that I felt like the pacing was like a little bit off, and I felt like the second half of the book could have easily been condensed to help with the pacing. I also had issues with the romance. It's not that I was mad that there was a romance in the book, because I was like fine with it, but that's the problem. I was just fine with it. I was never sold on their relationship. It just felt very surface level. It felt like one of those situations where they were just more so infatuated with each other, or just infatuated with the idea of love. I'm landing on a 4 out of 5 stars for this book. I really had a good time with it, and I definitely want to get my own physical copy at some point because I liked it that much. I ended up watching 2 horror movies last night for my Friday night fright night. The first one I'm actually not going to talk about because I found out after watching it that the person who created it is a terrible human, so don't want to support. But if you watch the montage, you might be familiar with the movie that I watched. The other movie that I watched was a Japanese movie from like the 1970s called House. It's basically this haunted house movie, but it is so weird. Just every aspect of the movie is so strange, but specifically the visuals is what really lends to this kind of like trippy, weird situation. and I loved it. I was so down for it. I feel like it's definitely not going to be a movie for everybody, but it's right up my alley. It's definitely my style. Like, I love that kind of weirdness coming into play, so I really had a good time with it. I'm definitely looking forward to my next Friday night fright night. I also had some delicious fried rice. 10 out of 10. No notes. Perfection. I love fried rice so much. Let's go pick out my next and final read for this video. The last and final book that I'll be reading for this reading vlog is Leech. I stumbled across a book talker called Madison Can Read who does these like cozy horror book recommendation lists, and Leech happened to be on one of their book recommendation lists. I borrowed this from the horror king in my life. Thank you, Eli. I appreciate you. He's got all the horror books one needs, and I've got full access to his library. Living the dream over here. From what I gather, in this book we are following a doctor who is set to replace another doctor at this institute that has passed away. At this institute, this doctor finds out that this dark parasite has been killing people left and right. The doctor must figure out what's going on with this parasite and try to contain it before everyone ends up dead. I'm very intrigued to find out what makes this cozy, because that sounds pretty unsettling to me personally, but I'm definitely intrigued and I'm going to go into this open-minded. Without further ado, let's get to reading. Reading update time. I have made it to chapter Roman numerals. Oh my gosh, chapter 13. We've got Roman numeral chapters, so that took me aback for a second. But I do know Roman numerals, I promise. I'm not dumb. And we are on page 133. Now, I am enjoying this book, but cozy? Where? How? Huh? I mean, I guess again, in terms of like the atmosphere, it could be considered cozy to some people. It takes place in winter time, and like to some people that's comforting, but I just don't even see it as comforting in this book because of all the gruesome things that are happening in this book, and also just like the uncomfortable feeling throughout this book. Like, I just don't, in my mind, associate it as cozy. This one is just like really heavy in terms of the horror-esque things that it's bringing forth, and I feel like the sort of brutal things that we see throughout this book are pushing it more into a gothic horror place. Like, that's what I would consider this book, a gothic horror. There's nothing cozy about it to me personally. The plot hasn't really let up, and the eeriness came flooding through from the get-go. It's sort of chaotic and confusing. I've been having a hard time like wrapping my mind around exactly what is going on. I feel like I'm on a ride where anything could happen. I guess it's not necessarily confusing in terms of like, I know what's going on. Like, we know there is this parasite that has been killing people, and they're trying to figure out what exactly it is because there's no record of it. That to me makes sense. It's just like the rest of it is rather confusing, and also just like the way it's written can kind of come off as confusing at times. I'm not giving up. I'm not DNFing because I am enjoying it still. Like, I'm having a good time with it. It's just confusing. It's also very detailed in terms of its gruesomeness, so if you have a hard time with like detailed gruesome descriptions, I would not recommend picking up this book. But if you're somebody that enjoys nasty descriptions, no judgment from me, have at it. You'll enjoy Leech. I bought some fun Halloween decorations that I want to share with the class. I truthfully don't need any more Halloween decorations. Like, I really need to like stop myself, but sometimes I just can't help myself, especially if I find like a bookish Halloween decoration, then I am getting it. I'm sorry, I need it. I have to have it. I feel like I'm always on the lookout for bookish Halloween decorations, and not just like bookish Halloween decorations that are just like books stacked on each other that say spell book on the spine. That seems a little cliche to me. I always try to find some interesting and unique ones, but there's not a lot out there. There needs to be more Halloween decorations for bookworms. I'm just saying. The first one I got is this little skeleton reading a book. As you can see, he's like holding his head. I just thought this was fantastic. He's reading a Edgar Allan Poe book. I'm not exactly sure what Edgar Allan Poe book it is. The font is actually tiny, and I feel like I will strain my eyes if I try to read what it is. And then I got one of my new all-time favorite decorations, and that is this snow globe that has a skeleton chilling with his books. Now, it does have the stack of books situation where they're like spell books, and I was literally just talking about how this is cliche, but like the inside is what I love. I love that he has like a little book collection in there. He's just chilling, sitting in there all cozied up, and I just love it. It makes me so happy. I'll play this song for you. I'm not exactly sure what the song even is. Oh, it's Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, right? The witch is dead, dun 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 dun. Those are my two new bookish Halloween decorations. I'm super excited about them. These will in fact be chilling on my bookshelf. They're going on the bookshelf, which is good because I don't have many bookshelf decorations, which does not mean I should go buy more. I'm cutting myself off this season. I don't need any more decorations, unless I find something really good. But I'm gonna try to stop putting myself in a position where I'm surrounded by Halloween decorations, because sort of my weakness, apparently. It's time to get back to Leech. I am interested to see what happens here in the last chunk of the book. I have no idea what could be coming, so that low-key excites me, but I'm definitely hoping that the last chunk also kind of clears some things up for me. Without further ado, let's get to reading. Reading update time. I finished Leech and can confirm, for me and my reader preferences, this is not cozy. Now, if you are somebody who has read this book and you feel it's cozy, you are valid in feeling that way. I don't want to take that away from you because, again, I feel like calling something cozy or categorizing something as cozy is honestly up to you and your preferences. Whatever you think is cozy, that is cozy. Nobody can take that away from you, okay? I'm telling you that right here, right now. But for my preferences and what I feel like fits under the cozy umbrella, nope. Now, in terms about how I felt about this book as a whole, I ended up really liking it. I thought it was a very interesting story, definitely one of the most unique books I've probably ever read. It also at times had me gagging with its descriptions. There's just so many like gruesome descriptions of things that are going on within this book. Specifically, some of like the parasite elements had me gagging. Like there's at one point a parasite behind somebody's eye. And just like the thought of that even, I'm like, oh, it was so hard to like sit here and read this book and not be like, oh, the whole time reading it. It's one of those books where I really don't feel like you can pick up on where it's going to go. And I love that about it. I love that it was never predictable. I never could picture what was going to happen. This layer of confusion is oftentimes just like really throwing you off. And in terms of the originality of this book, because I did say that this is one of the most original books that I've ever read, and I never really like explained why that is, I would say like the perspective is one of the elements that makes this so original, because we're low-key following a parasite. I don't even know if I've mentioned that, but like the parasite basically uses human bodies as a host. Just that element alone was such a standout for me and just pushed this into such an original place. In terms of the writing style, I honestly went back and forth on loving it and also despising it. I think the intention was obviously to make things a little bit confusing, but that for me was frustrating at times. I don't enjoy feeling confused while I'm reading, and I think that the writing style itself lended to that confusion. It was just challenging at times, which honestly can be a good thing. It can be nice to be challenged. I just wasn't always vibing with that style of writing. I think this is a book that I could honestly read time and time again, and each time that I read it, get something new out of it. And I almost feel like it's unfair to rate this book after only having read this book once, but like that's what I'm here to do. Obviously, I'm here to read books, rate them, share my thoughts on them. I landed on a 3.5 out of 5 stars with this book. I do think that that rating would change if I were to read it again, because I just feel like I would have a clearer picture of things if I were to reread it, and I would have a better understanding for what's going on. Now, reaching the end of this video, I feel like I was able to achieve what I set out to do with this video in figuring out what cozy horror is. I feel like I have like a general idea, but at the same time, I feel like cozy in general is sort of like up to a person and their preferences, their reader preferences. So what I might think is cozy might not be what you think is cozy. What you think is cozy might not be what I think is cozy. So I do think there is a part of it that is up to the reader. I don't think anybody can come in and be like, this is what cozy horror is, and then that be the one thing that it is, because I think it's different things for different people. But what I have picked up is that I feel like it's obviously got horror elements to it. I think that the plot oftentimes will include some kind of mystery and figuring out that mystery, but it's going to be rather subtle in nature, I would say. And I think the most part for me, the coziness comes from the atmosphere, the setting of the book. That's my interpretation of the genre, or the subgenre. I feel like I definitely want to read more cozy horror books in the future to kind of like get an even clearer picture as to what cozy horror is. And I also feel like I do really enjoy the genre. So let's rank the books now. Let's talk about the books that I read for this video. I feel like in first place, I would put Someone You Can Build a Nest In. I really enjoyed this book. I had a lot of fun with it. It's humorous and it's gruesome at the same time. Then in second place, I would have to go with Leech. This was such an interesting read. Again, one of the more original books that I've ever read, and I definitely want to read it again in the future. Then finally, we've got The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands. This book just did not really work for me. I wanted a lot more from it. It was promising at the beginning, but it just did not deliver on its concept, in my opinion. Those are my rankings, and with that, we have reached the end of this video. As always, I want to hear from you guys down below in the comments. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them. Would you classify them as cozy horror? If not, let me know down below in the comments if you have any cozy horror book recommendations for me. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye-o.